and welcome you to our live stream this Sunday. We're going to be starting off with our Sunday school, and right now I am trying to get I hope that's the right one. Trying to get the stream shared to our group page. But good morning, everyone. Just wanted to be with you here. Just wanted to go over a few things. Um, Need to turn my phone on silent because apparently people's texting me. And today we are going to okay, so last week we missed last Sunday for our Sunday school because I didn't plan far enough in advance and I didn't get the stuff done. And so we'll try to cover both of the lessons today. Uh, Again, let me try to get this the thing here figured out. Give me a thumbs up or a shout out if you can hear me well. Just want to make sure the stream's going okay. It's been a whole it's been a whole week and a half since we were able to do live streams again. Trying to get to my study guide here for the Sunday school lesson. And apparently, I can't find it. Alrighty, there we go. Not that one. Well, that is not good because it's not all in one area, but that's all right. I can't get it shared to the group right now. Alrighty. So in our first lesson, they start us off in Proverbs chapter 1 verses 7 through 19. And so if you guys went ahead and studied that, that's good. We're just going to briefly go over it and try to get into lesson 2 as well. Um, First of all, the Proverbs. Let's think about the Proverbs real quick. And it says the knowledge of God and the knowledge to live wisely are interrelated. Next to the knowledge of God in salvation, the knowledge to live wisely is the most important kind of knowledge. Godly knowledge is more than information, it is about transformation. You can be factually right, but spiritually wrong. Solomon's argument in the book of Proverbs is simple. Godly wisdom is applied truth that leads to transformation and wise practical living. And if you've ever read anything out of the proverb, studied anything out of the proverb, you'll see that. In fact, the proverbs are probably the most referenced um, book when you're coming to uh, different kinds of knowledge. When you're trying to impart wisdom on maybe a friend, a family member, a relative, even just another Christian, or maybe even those lost people out there. Um, Going to the book of Proverbs is a wise decision because it's all wisdom, and it all deals with different things, different situations. Now, you have to remember that none of the Bible can be used without we need to be able to wrap our minds around the proverbs in what context they're being presented. And so it goes and it explains a little bit about the context. It says, after King David died, Solomon, his son, ruled the kingdom of Israel for 40 years. During his reign, he gained a reputation for being a wise king who composed 3,000 proverbs. Who composed 3,000 proverbs. In the introductory verses of the book of Proverbs, Solomon shared the benefit that comes to those who give serious attention to the proverbs in it. They would nourish an understanding of God's wisdom, enabling them to live in with integrity and discretion. And those words are really, really key words when you're trying to understand where the wisdom comes from, right? We're all striving to walk with integrity. We're all striving to walk with discernment or discretion when we're encountering situation, when we're encountering different even people, right? Today is a really, really good example. The times that are going on is a really, really good example of I wouldn't say picking and choosing, but being mindful of the discussions you might be involved in, being mindful of the activity you might be involved in. So one of the things that, and in fact, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but one of the things that's going on is there's a pandemic out there, but we have a need as an American people, but also as a Christian people to take action, to be able to walk and to be able to do something that is calling us to contribute to, right? There's a movement out there and all that, but we also have to be mindful that there's an illness out there that we should probably be protective of, that we should be distanced from, right? And the buzzword for the last 5 months now has been social distance, right? Social distancing. But that doesn't mean that we can't do something else, right? In the same way that we've been presenting online church and we've been doing our stuff online and getting the stuff out there for the social media platforms and whatnot, the different video distribution stuff and whatnot. We have to be mindful about how we go about doing things, right? And maybe there's a new way we can contribute to these causes, to the needs that are out there, because there are needs out there that the church has been called to. And in that same way, when we go and reflect on the Bible, and especially in the Proverbs, we have to understand the way it's being presented. We have to understand, we have to be mindful that we don't take anything and separate it from what it's to be used for. And Solomon here is saying that godly wisdom can be used to improve ourselves and to transform the way we think about things. Solomon then turned his attention to his son. His son would need to live according to God's ways. He would need to make up his mind that he would walk in God's wisdom. Making that decision would not be easy, since he would encounter evil people who would try to entice him to join them. They would try to persuade him that the road they took would be fun, but it would involve violence, murder, and theft. Solomon warned that these evil ones would eventually have their lives stolen from them. And in that same way, right, when we're going out through life, not only should we be mindful of what's going on around us, but we should plan. And this resonates with Native people. We should plan to be able to live for generations, and maybe not ourselves, maybe not us individually, but our children and our children's children and their children and their children's children. You know, the phrase coined by some of these by some of these tribes was 7 generations. We have to think 7 generations ahead of where we want to be. We have to plan and we have to do this stuff. In fact, we're coming up on an important time in our tribal nation, the Pawnee Nation. We're coming up on a time where we're going through an election cycle or season or whatever. We have to plan. We have to be mindful of what we want to do and be able to bless these people that are coming up, that they have the same mindset, that we work with them, that we contribute to them, and that we help them and assist them. And we don't just put them out there on their own and hope that they succeed. We have to be a group and move towards that all together, right? And that's what the godly wisdom that Solomon was trying to impart on his son. Let's see. And then he addresses different topics throughout this first part, but let's just jump into it. And in verse 7, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and discipline." And again, we don't want to take anything out of context, but what he was trying to impart was a understanding that respect for the Lord is where we can start, right? And that even resonates. That's even true today. And even though this was in the good old days of the kings, that is a good bit of wisdom, because when somebody doesn't know the Lord, they're going to act foolishly, right? They're going to do things that fulfill their desires, that fulfill their thought or their idea of success instead of what God has worked out and what God has planned, right? So a respect for God, the fear of the Lord, what he says here, a respect for God, then gives us a beginning to be able to understand what God wants from us. Instead of living out our own will, we start then living in God's will. And it says, "Fools despise wisdom and discipline," right? When we're kids, we probably don't understand, and we probably don't like rules. But then as we get older and we mature, we understand that it's not about the rules. It's about living, as a Christian, living godly. But even if you're not a Christian, our culture today is influenced by the moral values that God instills up in our hearts and in our minds, what is good and what is bad, right? And so even if you're not a Christian, you still have a way of understanding that some things shouldn't be done. And they might not be rules. There might be laws against it, but you might not understand the laws, but you understand that it's not good, and so you don't pursue that, right? And as we grow, even as Christians, as the more we understand our Bible, the more we read, and the more we try to gain wisdom, the more we're going to be disciplined about our activity and our actions and our behavior. In verse 8 it says, "Listen, my son, to your father's instructions, and don't reject your mother's teaching." So the commandment there says, honor your parents, right? And actually, Brother Junior has said this before, is that it's the only one that has a blessing tied to it, right? There's only that one that has a receipt, so to speak, something that we receive in return for doing, and that's we get a blessing for honoring our parents. And again, that same one is right there. Listen to your father's instruction and don't reject your mother's teaching, right? Verse 9, for they will be a garland of favor on your head and pendants around your neck. Again, that's going back to what we understand as discipline, as rules, as maturing. Um, in the same way about the commandment, it's a blessing, right? It's a blessing that we listen to our parents, but also that it guards us against any further straying, right? Unless we just throw it off and then we get out there and we start doing whatever we want, right? We don't have anything around our neck. We don't have anything that it's not control, but reminds us, right? A pendant, a necklace, a piece of jewelry reminds us of different things. My son, if sinners entice you, don't be persuaded. If they say, "Come with us, let's set an ambush and kill someone. Let's attack some innocent person just for fun. Let's swallow them alive like Sheol, who like those who go down to the pit." Again, Solomon was trying to warn his son specifically, but warning anybody that there are going to be those people who are out there that want you to do things that aren't necessarily glorifying God, or even doing right amongst ourselves, right? Um, and then in there he says, it says, "We'll find all kinds of valuable plunder." Verses 13 and 14. "Throw in your lot with us, and we'll all share the loot." How true is that? I mean, we really want to look at that. When people go out and do evil things, would you really trust them? Would you really trust somebody that um, maybe befriends somebody, right, and is able to con them? We, I wouldn't think that it's right to be able to trust somebody who can go and con somebody. Now there might be different relationships, but it's in their heart, right? It's a heart thing, and their heart needs to be changed to be able to act different. And that's what he's saying here, is that they're they're going to continue down this path, and we don't I don't want you to be a part of this, because eventually they're going to be consumed with all that, right? It's never going to be enough. You know what I did? My tie looks kind of crazy right now, and it's because it's green. I'll have to change ties. I'm just looking at that. Um, we go and we see in verses 15 and 16, "My son, don't travel that road or set foot on their path, because their feet run toward evil, and they hurry to shed blood. It is useless to spread a net where any bird can see it, but they set an ambush to kill themselves. They attack their own lives. Such are the paths of all who make profit dishonestly. It takes the lives of those who receive it." You see, what he's trying to tell them there is that even though there's motives on how to go about doing different things, right, there are also consequences for going down those paths, for following somebody who wants to take you down those paths. It doesn't end well, right? And so, let's see. Only the grace of God can bring people into His holy fellowship and enable them to fulfill the creative purpose of God. And again, it says at the begin or at the end of our lesson here, it says dig deeper into the meaning of a key word or phrase, and it says take a closer look at the meaning of the fear of the Lord. Read the verse in different translations, and that's really good, because actually, okay, so we're reading out of the Christian Standard right now, but also let's see if I have, yeah, the King James version of Proverbs 1:7. Um, Now remember, Proverbs is after Job, but also after Psalms, right? And then we're actually going to get into later on in our session, or in our season of study, we're going to be getting into the Song of Songs. And so it's not just over the Proverbs. So in the King James version, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Right, and the Christian Standard and the King James are similar in that part. But if we go back and we look at, let's do the New International, the NIV. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of that's not helpful because that's the same. Maybe they're trying to show us something that it's all the same here. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. I did not find one that was different. And maybe that's for a reason. Maybe they're trying to show us that um, everybody agrees that the start of knowledge is the beginning. It begins with the fear of the Lord, with a respect for God, and not just well, God can do this and whatnot, but that God created us, right? God gave us a purpose in this life, and not just me individually, but us as a human race gave us a purpose to be able to um, give glory to Him, right? Not to tear down ourselves or divide each other, or get in conflict with one another, even though that stuff was going to happen, right? Because we are left to our own devices, we create a lot of bad things, right? Even wars, right? Humans are capable of a lot of bad things. And so, if we think about what he was trying to tell us here, it's that um, long as we start with God and keep Him priority, and that's again one of the things that we have to understand is uh, we serve the Lord, we love the Lord with all of our heart, with all of our mind, with all of our body, with all of our spirit, our soul, right? But also we love each other. There's no room for, well, God will take care of us if we respect Him, right? There's that. But if we're taking care of ourselves, then who's looking after us? Because if we don't respect God, how can He give us anything, right? He's given us a way out of that by choosing the Lord Jesus Christ as our Savior. But again, it goes back to that respect and that fear is the beginning of our understanding of how things are going to work. So if we move on this, we're going into lesson 2 now. Oh, and there's a illustration here. It says a global positioning system. Uh, and if you guys recognize that global positioning system is short, I mean, GPS is the acronym for global positioning system. Um, is a handy tool for getting directions. Simply provide the address, and the GPS will have you on your way. And this is really helpful because when we had to start getting things around and whatnot, I had to go visit some different places for some different equipment, but I had to figure out where they were. And now, Google Maps, Bing Maps, and all the other map systems out there. Back in the day, we used to actually have a fold-out map, right? And we used to have to learn how to do the coordinates and all that type of stuff. Have to learn how to read the legend to be able to get places, to be able to understand what the highway should look like, right? An interstate is marked different than a state highway or a county road, and what they should look like, whether it's paved or a 4-lane highway or a turnpike. Um, but now that's all taken care of for us, right? On these apps, it uses the GPS stuff and marks us, and then, or there's a bunch of technology going on. It says it even tells you how long you'll have to travel, how long you have to travel before you reach your destination, and that's really handy because Google now will tell you when you're running late. when you should be on your way to be able to make your appointment on time. And you set it all up and everything. You say, I need to go here at 11 o'clock. Well, it'll tell you whether or not you're running behind, because it'll say, well, we need to get here. It'll take this amount of time, and it's taking all the information into consideration, but then it's presenting it to you on your phone. The tool works well unless you decide you're going to ignore it and go in another direction. And think about it, how many times have you done that on your GPS, right? Well, I want to detour and go to, I want to go to Quick Trip, or I want to go to the convenience store real quick. Oh, I forgot, I need to pick up something at Walmart, right? You get off your path, and now it's got to recalculate and everything like that. That's when we hear the rerouting announcement over and over again. And mine is pretty annoying because it'll remind me like every 5 seconds. Solomon gave clear instructions about how to live wisely, but these instructions are useless to the person who refuses to follow them. And then here we start in chapter 3. Verses 1 and 2, it says, My son, don't forget my teaching, but let your heart keep my commands, for they will bring you many days, a full life and well-being. Never let, verses 3 and 4, never let loyalty and faithfulness leave you. Tie them around your neck. Again, that illustration about being a reminder about what we're supposed to be doing, what our calling is. It says, tie them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will find favor and a high regard with God and people. And it's not just glorifying God, right? We have to be beacons of light, as Jesus called us out. We are the salt of the earth. We're the light. And we shouldn't put a lampshade. We shouldn't cover our light. We should be shining for all, right? So that, again, we're doing our mission and pointing people to Jesus. And in that same respect, that's what he's talking about here. This is written way before the New Testament, right? And this is bits and nuggets of wisdom, but it's all true. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. Verse 6, in all your ways know him and he will make your paths straight, right? Talking about GPS, talking about, systems and technology and everything. When we come up to an intersection, right, and we can't really see behind us, but we got somebody with us, the trust he's talking about here is the same trust that you would put into somebody else that is going to tell you whether the way is clear or not. And how many times do we really trust that? Does anybody really think about that, first of all, right? That's the trust he's talking about, that we're not going to get into a wreck, we're not going to injure ourselves, and worst case scenario, we're not going to walk away from that scene, right? That's the trust he's talking about, putting into God, because God has your blind side, so to speak. He has all that figured out. He has your future figured out if you put your trust into him. If you really genuinely trust him, just like you would trust the other adult or whoever's looking out for you in that same respect. See, and you have to make that determination, because just the same way that how would you say this? The same way that the rules of the road go, you're ultimately responsible for that decision, right? You have to decide whether or not you're really going to put your trust into that person. And you'll see, right? You'll see the results. And God said he's going to take care of you. He's not going to fail you on that part. Same way, if you put that trust into somebody else and they're not really looking, you could get into a bad accident, right? And so the responsibility for that doesn't rest on the person, because you're the one ultimately responsible for the movement, the direction of the vehicle. Don't be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. This will be healing for your body and strengthening for your bones. Verses 9 and 10. Honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first produce of your entire harvest. Then your barns will be completely filled and your vats will overflow with new wine. Verse 11. Do not despise the Lord's instructions, my son, and do not loathe his discipline. And that part right there, right? Sometimes we get outside of the will of God, but that doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't like it. In fact, as a Christian, we probably should uh, um, be thankful. We should appreciate the fact that God is willing to discipline us to get us back in line, and that's what He's saying here. Um, don't despise the Lord's instructions, but also don't have a bitter um, disposition towards his discipline to bring you back in. Not only is it training, but it's also a reminder that we aren't necessarily doing the right thing in the first place, and he's graceful. He's loving enough that he wants us to get back in line. And so not only do we not only should we listen at all times, but we should also appreciate when he's doing things that are loving and caring and getting us back on that path. Verse 12, for the Lord disciplines the one he loves, just as a father disciplines the son in whom he delights. And again, God, well, I just explained that I didn't recognize that the verse was right after that, but that's what he ultimately wants, is that he wants us all to be loving towards each other in unity, working towards one goal, one purpose. And in that, he has to remind us sometimes, because what we started off with, right? That repetitive instruction, that repetitive reminder that we're not in this alone, but also that it's not for us per se, right? It's not for us to get the glory. It's for his glory, but for us to be blessed, for us to be able to live out our lives in peace, and to be able to even prosper, right? We don't need materialistic things to be able to make us wealthy, right? As long as and natives know this true. If we have a huge family, right? If we're blessed with a lot of kids, a lot of grandkids, and a lot of great grandkids and whatnot, if we see that legacy continuing, we get fulfillment as native people, because that's our goal, is to be able to, especially in light of what we've understood or what we've gone through, right? To be able to be blessed in that God gave us generations to follow us, then that's good enough. Materialistic things and all. I mean, money. What is money in the first place? It's kind of a exchange of goods that take place, before or afterwards, right? It's not really necessarily something that's physical. Even though we have a piece of paper that looks weird, it's not that's not money in a way that like salt or goods are, right? Harvest, like food, animals, and all that. There's other stuff that we can trade. And so, that's the end of that one. So next week we'll pick up with session 3. Let's see if I can give us a little preview here. It will be in Proverbs chapter, once it pulls up here. It's not one to pull up. I guess there's no preview for next week. But we'll be in Proverbs again. Oh, here we go. Chapter 3, verses 21 through 35. We'll go through there. And it looks like it's talking about love. I don't know. That didn't pull up right away. So we'll be back with our church service, our regular Sunday worship service here in a few minutes. And I just wanted to thank you all for tuning in, and just hope that this helped you, the Bible study helped you. If you have any prayer requests, if you have anything like that go ahead and leave us a comment, shoot us a text, shoot us an email if you have our emails. Um, Me doing a one man show, I can't do the graphics at the bottom and everything, but we'll get everything set up for Sunday worship, so you don't have to worry about sharing stuff out or anything like that. And we'll have our music and we'll have everything, and just stay tuned in on whatever platform you're listening or watching. So until